Did you know that millions of seniors are silently carrying mental health struggles so heavy, so isolating, that they wake up every single morning and choose, out of habit, out of pride, out of a lifetime of being told to simply push through, to say nothing at all? You might think that after decades of life experience, of surviving loss and hardship and everything the world has thrown at you, emotional pain would feel easier to manage, more familiar, more controllable. But here is the uncomfortable truth that nobody in your circle is saying out loud. For many seniors, the later years bring a specific kind of emotional weight that is unlike anything they faced before. And the generation that was raised never to complain, never to burden others, never to admit that something inside was breaking, is the least equipped to ask for the one thing that would actually help. Help. But here is the good news. The silence is not permanent. The stigma is not bigger than the truth. And understanding what is actually happening, naming it clearly, without shame, without judgment, is the first and most powerful step towards something better. Meet Raymond, a quietly dignified 74-year-old retired schoolteacher from a small community in rural Georgia. Raymond spent 31 years shaping young minds. He coached the debate team. He organized the annual spring fair. He was, by every visible measure, the kind of man his community depended on, steady, present, and always the first to show up when someone else was struggling. But 3 years into retirement, something shifted in Raymond that he could not name and would not mention. The mornings became harder to start. The activities he once loved, gardening, reading, the occasional fishing trip with his neighbor, stopped feeling like anything at all. He sat in his kitchen some mornings for an hour before speaking a single word. His daughter called every Sunday, and he told her, without hesitation, that everything was fine. It was not fine. Raymond was not lazy. He was not ungrateful. He was not, as he privately feared, losing his mind. He was one of the more than 20% of seniors worldwide currently experiencing a diagnosable mental health condition, and, like the overwhelming majority of them, he was experiencing it completely alone. His story did not begin with a crisis. It began with silence. Small, daily, dignified silence that slowly became a wall between Raymond and everyone who loved him. Raymond's story is the story this channel was built to tell. Today, we are going to walk through 7 mental health struggles seniors face in silence, struggles that are real, common, treatable, and desperately underrepresented in the conversations we have about aging. If you are ready to break the silence, for yourself or for someone you love, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and let's dive in. Now, before we get into the 7 struggles, there is something that needs to be said clearly and without qualification. What you are about to hear is not a clinical lecture. It is not a list of diagnoses designed to make you feel labeled or reduced to a set of symptoms. And it is absolutely not a suggestion that something is fundamentally wrong with you or with the seniors in your life who are quietly carrying more than they show. What it is a conversation that is long overdue. Mental health in the senior community is one of the most consistently underdiscussed, underdiagnosed, and undertreated areas in all of modern healthcare. Research published by the World Health Organization confirms that more than 20% of adults aged 60 and older experience a mental health condition, and that the vast majority of those individuals never receive any form of treatment. Not because treatment is unavailable, because the conversation never happens, because the stigma is older than the science, and because an entire generation was raised with the sincere and deeply held belief that emotional struggle was a private matter, something to be managed quietly, internally, and alone. That belief was never a character flaw. It was a survival strategy. And for many decades, in many circumstances, it worked. But survival strategies that serve us in one season of life can quietly become the walls that trap us in another. Raymond's doctor told him something during their first honest conversation, a conversation that Raymond had avoided initiating for nearly 2 years, that he has since repeated to anyone who will listen. She said, "Raymond, your generation carried everything. That was never weakness. But you do not have to keep carrying it alone." That is the premise of everything that follows in this video. This channel was built on a single conviction that seniors deserve access to honest, specific, compassionate information about every dimension of their well-being, including the dimensions that have historically been met with silence, dismissal, or the suggestion to simply stay busy and count their blessings. You have counted your blessings. You have stayed busy. And if something still feels heavier than it should, that is not ingratitude. That is information. And information deserves to be taken seriously. Every struggle covered in today's video is documented, common, and this is the part that matters most, responsive to intervention. These are not permanent sentences. They are recognizable patterns with real, accessible pathways toward relief. You do not need to have a crisis to deserve support. You do not need to be falling apart to benefit from understanding what is actually happening inside you. And you do not need to protect the people around you from the truth of your experience. They would rather know. Raymond's daughter told him afterward that she had sensed something was wrong for over a year and had been waiting, quietly and helplessly, for him to open the door. Today, we open the door. Now, let's get into it. 7 mental health struggles seniors face in silence, and exactly what to do about each one. Raymond's doctor told him something at the start of their work together that reframed everything. Naming what you are carrying is not weakness. It is the beginning of putting it down. So that is exactly what we are going to do. Name each one clearly. And hand you something concrete for every single item on this list. Struggle number 1. Depression that disguises itself as aging. This is the most widespread and the most misidentified mental health struggle in the senior community. Depression in older adults rarely looks the way it does in younger people. It does not always present as sadness. More often it arrives as fatigue that sleep does not fix, as a loss of interest in activities that once brought genuine pleasure, as a slow withdrawal from social connection that feels, from the inside, like simply preferring quiet. Raymond did not feel sad. He felt nothing. And, because he could still function, could still dress himself, answer the phone, maintain the appearance of a normal day, he convinced himself that nothing was actually wrong. That is exactly how late-life depression operates. It hides inside the appearance of ordinary aging. The fix: tell one person, one trusted person, what your days actually feel like right now. Not the edited version. The real one. Then make one appointment with your primary care physician and use the word depression out loud in that conversation. Primary care doctors can screen, diagnose, and initiate treatment. You do not need a specialist to take the first step. You need one honest conversation. Struggle number 2. Anxiety that has no obvious cause. Many seniors experience a persistent, low-grade anxiety that they cannot attach to any specific event or threat. A general sense of unease. A restlessness that makes stillness feel unbearable. A mind that rehearses worst-case scenarios at 2 in the morning with remarkable consistency. This form of anxiety is frequently dismissed by seniors themselves and by those around them as simple worry, as being a natural worrier, as something to manage with distraction or willpower. It is none of those things. It is a recognized, treatable condition that responds well to both therapeutic and lifestyle-based interventions. The fix: begin a simple daily practice of writing down every worry that surfaces before bed, not to solve them, but to externalize them. Moving anxiety from inside your mind onto a page reduces its neurological grip measurably. Then speak with your doctor about whether a referral to a licensed therapist who specializes in older adults would be appropriate for your specific situation. Struggle number 3. Grief that was never fully processed. Seniors carry an accumulation of losses that younger generations have not yet encountered. Spouses, siblings, lifelong friends, careers, physical capabilities, homes, roles that once defined them. And, because life continues demanding forward motion, because others need caring for and routines need maintaining, grief frequently gets filed away rather than felt, until it surfaces years later in ways that are difficult to recognize as grief at all. Raymond lost his wife of 42 years 4 years before his retirement. He attended the funeral, received the casseroles, returned the phone calls, and then went back to teaching, because teaching was what he knew how to do. He never stopped long enough to grieve. And the grief never stopped waiting. The fix: seek out a grief support group specifically designed for seniors. The act of speaking your loss aloud in the presence of others who understand is one of the most clinically validated pathways through complicated grief. Your local hospital, hospice organization, or area agency on aging can connect you with groups meeting in your community or online this week. Struggle number 4: loneliness that feels too embarrassing to admit. Loneliness carries a particular shame in the senior community. The assumption, internal and external, is that a person who has lived a full life, raised a family, built friendships across decades, should not find themselves profoundly alone. And so the loneliness goes unspoken. It gets reframed as independence, as being selective, as simply preferring one's own company. But chronic loneliness is not a preference. It is a condition with measurable health consequences, equivalent in mortality risk, according to published research, to smoking 15 cigarettes per day. The fix: identify one recurring social commitment, not occasional, but weekly, and protect it with the same discipline you would a medical appointment. A senior center class, a faith community gathering, a volunteer shift. Consistency of social contact matters more than the quantity of any single interaction. Struggle number 5: cognitive anxiety, the fear of losing your mind. The fear of developing dementia is one of the most privately consuming anxieties seniors carry. Every forgotten name, every misplaced key, every moment of mid-sentence blankness triggers a quiet terror that most seniors never voice to anyone. The fix: speak this fear out loud to your doctor and request a baseline cognitive assessment. Having an objective, documented starting point transforms a shapeless fear into a monitored, manageable situation. Knowledge, even when it is difficult, is always less frightening than the imagination left unchecked. Struggle number 6: loss of purpose after retirement. Identity and purpose do not retire when careers do. And the absence of structure, contribution, and daily meaning that retirement can bring is a genuine psychological loss that is almost never acknowledged as such. The fix: identify one way to contribute meaningfully to something beyond yourself this week. Mentorship, volunteering, teaching a skill, joining a community initiative. Purpose is not found, it is constructed, deliberately, one commitment at a time. Struggle number 7: the shame of needing help. This is the struggle underneath all the others. The belief, bone deep and generationally reinforced, that needing support is a burden, a weakness, an imposition. It is the reason Raymond sat alone in his kitchen for 2 years while his daughter waited for him to open the door. The fix: practice saying one sentence out loud, alone if necessary, until it feels true. Asking for help is an act of courage, not a confession of failure. Then say it to one person who loves you. Raymond said it to his daughter on a Sunday phone call. She drove 4 hours to see him the following weekend. 7 struggles. 7 fixes. All of them beginning with one honest word. Now I want to stop and speak directly to the part of you that has been quietly resistant throughout this entire video. Because that part is real. And it deserves a direct, respectful, honest response. People my age did not grow up talking about mental health. We survived without it, and we turned out fine. You did survive. That is not a small thing, it is an extraordinary thing. The resilience your generation demonstrated across decades of genuine hardship is real, documented, and deserving of every ounce of respect it receives. But survival and thriving are not the same destination. You can survive decades of unprocessed grief, unaddressed anxiety, and chronic loneliness, and the evidence of that survival does not mean the weight was not real. It means you were strong enough to carry it. The question worth asking now is not whether you survived it. The question is whether you still have to. Raymond survived 4 years of silent depression. He survived it completely. He also describes those 4 years as the loneliest and most colorless of his entire life. Survival was never in question. What was lost was something quieter and more valuable: time, connection, and the version of himself his grandchildren deserve to know. Therapy and mental health treatment are for people with serious problems. What I have is not that serious. This is perhaps the most quietly destructive belief on this list, because it is the belief that keeps the door closed longest. The threshold most seniors set for serious enough to deserve help is so high that by the time they reach it, years of unnecessary suffering have already accumulated. Mental health support is not reserved for crisis. It is not a last resort. It is maintenance. It is the same logic that takes you to a doctor for a persistent cough rather than waiting until it becomes pneumonia. The severity of a symptom does not determine whether it deserves attention. Its presence does. My faith and my family are enough. I do not need outside help. Faith and family are genuine, powerful sources of strength, and nobody in this video is suggesting otherwise. Raymond's faith was a foundational part of his recovery. His relationship with his daughter was the emotional anchor that made everything else possible. But faith communities and loving families, as devoted and well-meaning as they are, cannot diagnose a depressive episode. They cannot distinguish complicated grief from ordinary sadness. They cannot provide the specific, trained, evidence-based support that a licensed professional brings to a mental health conversation. They can hold your hand. They cannot read the map. You need both. Raymond did not choose between his faith and his treatment. He carried both. And he will tell you, without hesitation, that each one made the other more powerful. The stigma is old. The science is clear. And you have already spent enough years carrying what you were never meant to carry alone. Now, before we close, there is one more thing I want to give you. Something that was not in the original 7. Something Raymond's therapist introduced during their 5th session together, a technique so simple that Raymond initially dismissed it, and so effective that he has practiced it every single day for the past 14 months without missing once. It is called the daily emotional check-in. Most seniors, most people, frankly, move through their days almost entirely focused on the external. What needs to be done? Who needs to be called? What is happening in the news, in the family, in the world outside the window? The internal landscape, what is actually happening emotionally, beneath the surface of a functioning day, goes unexamined. Not deliberately. Simply because nobody ever established the habit of looking. The daily emotional check-in creates that habit. In 5 minutes or less. With nothing required except a quiet moment and a willingness to be honest with yourself. Here is exactly how it works. Step 1. Choose a fixed time every day, the same time, without exception. Raymond chose the first 5 minutes after his morning coffee was poured, before he opened the newspaper or turned on the television. The consistency of the timing is not a preference. It is the mechanism. Habits form through repetition at fixed cues, not through good intentions applied randomly. Step 2. Ask yourself 3 specific questions and answer each one honestly, out loud or in writing. The 3 questions are, what am I feeling right now, not thinking, feeling? Where in my body am I holding tension or discomfort today? And is there anything I have been avoiding looking at this week? Do not rush the answers. Do not edit them for acceptability. The only rule is honesty. Step 3. Rate your overall emotional state on a simple scale of 1 to 10 and write the number down. Not to judge it. Not to fix it immediately. Simply to create a record. Raymond keeps a small notebook on the kitchen table specifically for this purpose. After 3 months of daily entries, patterns become visible that are completely invisible in the moment. Recurring low periods, consistent triggers. Gradual improvements that feel imperceptible day to day, but become undeniable across weeks of data. Step 4. If your number falls below a 4 on any given day, tell one person. Not the whole story necessarily. Simply, I am having a hard day. That one disclosure, that single sentence spoken to another human being, interrupts the isolation that allows silent struggle to deepen and calcify. Raymond's average score in his first week was 3. 14 months later, it consistently sits between 6 and 8. Not because his life became easier. Because he stopped moving through it without looking at it. 5 minutes. 3 questions. 1 number. 1 sentence when it matters most. Raymond calls it the smallest thing that changed everything. Mental health struggles may come in silence, but silence was never the only option. By understanding what you are actually carrying, naming it without shame, and taking even one small deliberate step towards support, you can reclaim the fullness of a life that has always deserved to be lived, not merely survived, but genuinely, deeply lived. You now have what Raymond wished someone had handed him 4 years earlier. You have all 7 struggles named clearly and without judgment. You have a specific, actionable fix for every single one. You have the daily emotional check-in, 5 minutes each morning, 3 honest questions, 1 number, and 1 sentence on the hardest days. A practice simple enough to begin tomorrow morning and powerful enough to change the entire emotional landscape of your life over the months that follow. And you have something perhaps more valuable than any technique or framework: the knowledge that what you have been carrying in silence was never yours to carry alone. The silence ends here. So here is exactly what we want you to do right now, before this video ends, before the momentum of this moment fades, and before the old habit of moving on without acting quietly reasserts itself. First, if this video gave you even one moment of recognition, one instant where something we said made you think, "That is me," or "That is someone I love," hit that like button right now. That single action helps this video reach another senior who is sitting somewhere today in the exact silence this video was made to break. Your like is not a small gesture. It is a hand extended to someone who does not yet know this conversation exists. Second, subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell if you have not already done so. Every week, this channel publishes content built with one purpose: to give seniors the honest, compassionate, specific information about their well-being that the rest of the world consistently fails to provide. The conversation we open today continues every single week. You belong in it. Third, leave a comment below right now. Tell us, which of these 7 struggles felt most familiar to you? Was it the depression that disguised itself as aging? The grief that was never fully processed? The shame of needing help? You do not need to share more than you are comfortable with. Even 2 words is enough. Because when you comment, something quietly extraordinary happens. You look up and discover that the person beside you in this community has been carrying something remarkably similar. And that discovery, that moment of recognized humanity, is itself a form of healing that no technique can fully replicate. Raymond left his first comment on a video like this one 18 months ago. 3 sentences. He told us he had not spoken honestly about how he was feeling in over 3 years. That comment received over 400 replies. He read every single one. And fourth, share this video with one senior in your life who you suspect may be carrying something they have not yet found the words for. You may never fully know what that share meant to them, but Raymond's daughter shared a video just like this one with him. And he picked up the phone. The door is open. We will see you in the next video.